All right, there we go. So, as I mentioned, my name is Chris Stevens. I'm a career coach. I work with an organization called Career Catchers, and we are happy to be presenting this workshop here today with the Montgomery College Ignite Hub. Big thanks to the Ignite Hub for letting us use the space and putting on these workshops. The goal of the Ignite Hub is to work with individuals who are interested in starting a career in IT or learning more about the IT field. So while our workshop is going to be about, finding a job more generally, we will be using some sort of IT examples. So this is our first workshop of 2025, and we do thank you all for joining us. And we thought the best way to start would be to talk about, the process of the job search. Now, maybe you're not working right now and looking for a job. Maybe you do have a job and you're looking to switch, or maybe gain new skills, or get a promotion. Wherever you are in your career, the material covered in this workshop will hopefully will help you as well. It's sort of applicable for everybody. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about sort of how to get started with your job search. Looking for a job can be pretty overwhelming. There's resumes, cover letters, job applications, interviews. A lot of stuff goes into finding a job, and it can feel pretty overwhelming. So we're going to talk about some simple ways to get started. We're going to talk about sort of how to do job research, market research, to kind of figure out, if your chosen field is increasing or decreasing. We're going to talk about some different online job boards, which some of you may be familiar with already. We're going to briefly cover some networking strategies and how to follow up with potential employers, as well as creating a sort of a job search plan, and addressing some of the the emotions that come with this job search. So a lot of material today. Please feel free to ask any questions. So to get started. No matter sort of where you are in your career, the first question you have to sort of ask yourself with your job search is, what do you want to do, right? Where do you want to be at the end of this? You may have a pretty good idea of that. You may not. Both of those are fine. But the job of finding a job really starts with a self-assessment, right? So how do you figure out what you are looking to do for your career? Now, self-assessments are good. They can provide a better understanding for you of your own skills, your strengths, and your interests. It can also help to narrow down your choices, right? I work with a lot of people who say that they're open to any kind of work, and that's fine. But oftentimes, we need a good place to start, and that requires narrowing it down to maybe 2 or 3 career fields to start with. To start exploring. So we're going to talk a little more about assessments, but that's kind of the first step there. Once you sort of complete that process of self-assessment, basically knowing where you want to, what you want to do, where you want to be, kind of long term, then we start talking about goal setting, right? So you have this. You have the dream of where you want to be. Maybe you want to be a cybersecurity expert, something like that. But what are the actual steps that you take to get there, right? Maybe you have some IT experience, maybe you don't. But whatever the case is, you need goals as stepping stones to get to your, to make your dream possible. So you're going to want to set both short-term and long-term goals. Long-term goals can be anything from a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever metric you want to use. But they should reflect where you want to be at the end of your job search process. Once you have your long-term goals, you can then start setting short-term goals, right? Those are the goals that aren't going to take quite as long, and they're going to get you towards your long-term goals, right? Maybe you need some training. Maybe there are certain certifications that are required. Maybe you want to find a job, in the meantime to earn some money so that you can, while you're doing training. Anything like that could be considered a short-term goal. It's something you can start working on, right away. As you're setting your goals, you also do want to think about your, your own personal requirements. We all have our own lives with our obligations and responsibilities. And the career, your sort of career choice is going to reflect that, right? This is you want to think about things like, what kind of salary do I require, right? What kind of work environment or schedule do I need as I'm looking for a job, and will my chosen career field sort of support that? What opportunities are available? So you want to think about those things as part of this process. I think we will go a little more in depth into this in future workshops, but for the moment, yeah, the first a big part of getting started is finding those goals, and having those goals definitely gives you focus, right? If you have something you're working towards, you're ideally going to be more motivated, and you're going to have a clear picture of where you want to go, right? You're not just going to be sort of, again, feeling overwhelmed and unsure. Having a set goal can really help with that. And it can also provide accountability, right? It can be very challenging for all of us to get things done by ourselves. A lot of times it helps to be accountable. And having goals can let other people, check in on you, and it provides, a way to kind of measure your progress. Does that make sense to everyone? Any comments or questions? I know we're kind of going through this briefly. All right. So because we're here at the Ignite Hub, like I said, I will be using a lot of IT examples. So there are a couple of different assessments. I mentioned assessments before that you can find if you're not really sure where you want to go. Now, let's say you're interested in the IT field. There are IT career assessments that you can take. This is an example of one right here through CompTIA. They're an IT certifying, organization, and they have a short little assessment that actually can sort of guide you towards which career path in IT is right for you. I work with a number of people who are, looking for IT jobs, and IT is a broad field, right? It touches every sort of industry that you can think of. So saying you want a career in IT is great, but that doesn't really give us a lot of information, right? We need to be a little more specific. Are you interested in cybersecurity? Are you interested in data analysis? Are you interested in IT, like help desk support, IT support? Those are all examples of career paths within IT. And if you're not sure where to start, that's fine. It's a lot of information. So doing in this case sort of an industry or career field specific assessment can really sort of help you focus on your chosen path. This certainly isn't the only one, but it is a good one that I recommend to folks who are sort of just getting started in IT and not sure which direction to take. The other one, and let me see if I can get out of here for just a second, is O-Net Online. Now, O-Net Online is a great resource. It's run by the U.S. Department of Labor, and it has a lot of different resources here. The one we're going to be, and I'm going to be referring back to this over the next few minutes, but if you go on their website, they have an interest profiler. Now, this is more general. This isn't IT specific, but this is an example of a career assessment that you can use. It's very short. It's 60 questions, takes maybe 10 minutes. And all it does is ask you about your career interests. It gives you a list of different job responsibilities, job tasks. And all you need to do to complete this assessment is tell it whether you would, love to do this kind of thing, or whether you would hate it, or maybe somewhere in the middle. It doesn't ask, you're not meant to think, oh, is this going to pay well? Oh, does this require training that I may or may not have? It's just about your interests. And at the end, it'll give you some results of possible career fields that you might be interested, based on your answers. Now, does that mean that the responses that you get from this assessment are the only way you can go for a career? Of course not. But it is a starting point, and it may make you think, right? Something may show up on that list that you hadn't considered, and maybe that's, a good reason to so another option to look at. So this is all on O-Net. It's it's their interest profiler. Again, we won't go through the whole thing today, but it is an example of a tool you can use. Any questions on assessments or anything like that? Okay. So you've maybe done a career assessment or two, kind of figured out what your intended career goal is, your intended career field. You set some goals for yourself about how you're going to get there. The next step in the process is research. You want to prepare for the job market. Now, as you know, some job fields are more in demand than others, right? Again, we're here talking about IT. IT is what we call a growth industry, right? There's a lot of openings. There's a lot of different companies doing that kind of work. And generally speaking, the IT field is projected to keep growing. We have a lot of recent developments like AI and things like that are going to sort of drive that. Healthcare would be another good example, right? The healthcare field is also growing. A lot of people need those services. But some fields, unfortunately, are not growing. Some of them may be, sort of downsizing in the number of opportunities that are available. Some of them may be flat, right? There isn't much projected job growth. So what you want to do, and that's where the market research comes in. You want to get a sense of, is your chosen field growing? Is it not growing? Is it staying flat? Now that depends on a lot of things, right? There may be a lot of opportunities for IT, in Silicon Valley, right? And not so many in, elsewhere, right? So a lot of this depends on location, geography, things like that. Are there opportunities available where you are? If not, that's something to consider. So all of this goes into market research, and basically the question you're trying to answer is, sort of what opportunities are available for me, where I am right now. The good news is there is a lot of resources that you can use for to do this research. I'm going to go back to O-Net here, although it's certainly not the only one. And again, just to use an IT example, we're going to put in IT support up here at the top. So one thing that O-Net does very well is provide a hub for all of this market research. Let's say that we're interested in becoming an IT support specialist. We'll click on this first one here, computer network support specialist. That's close enough, I think. And as you can see, this O-Net has all kinds of different information. It talks about sort of what some typical job responsibilities are for this role. It talks about what technology skills is often required. A lot of good things like that. What kind of training is needed. But it also talks about, let's go all the way down here, wage and employment trends. So we're in Maryland. We can actually find this market data for trends for this particular IT specialist role in Maryland. Now this is all general. Some companies may pay more, some may pay less, and so on. But this talks about wages right here. So we can see that in Maryland, the average wage for a computer network support specialist is about $95,000. That's pretty good. It does give us a range here, basically from about 60,000 to six figures. And we can see that's a little more than the average of the United States as a whole. So this also gives you a good idea of what your typical salary is likely to be around. Again, it does vary company to company, job to job, but this can give you a good idea, right? We were talking about your requirements earlier. What salary do you need? Is this type of job going to be able to support your lifestyle and what you're looking to do? So that's so the wages are part of the market research. And you can even see here that the wage growth is projected to be faster than average. We mentioned looking at sort of opportunities as well. Are there opportunities, whoops, around yeah, no, actually here it is. Projected job openings, right? We can see that in Maryland again. I think this is it. You know, as of 2020, there were about 8,000 IT jobs. And by 2030, that's expected to add at least 1,000 more, right? That's a little over 10% growth. That's pretty good. That's faster than average. With 700, new IT openings, or at least IT support openings, you know, every year. So, or not every year, but between 2020 and 2030. So again, this is averages. It's not a sure thing, of course, but this is information like this is a pretty good indication of whether or not the career field is growing. And I think with IT, we can safely say that it is. A lot of information right here. Any sort of comments or questions on this around some of the market research? Okay, so just to recap, when you're doing the market research, I think that the two things that you're really going to want to look at is the sort of the salary range, and then the number of job openings sort of in your area. Those are probably the two most important things to take away as you're doing the research. We talked about O-Net. Well, it'll have the link here when we send you this presentation. I absolutely recommend this is a good place to start for anyone who's not sure about what they want to do for a job, and even if you already have a career or are already working, taking the interest profiler can give you some ideas if you are interested in switching careers. So I think it's always good to check in on that. Questions so far? All right. Moving right along. So you've got your goal setting, you've done your market research, you've sort of decided on your industry, your career field, maybe even a specific job title. Now you have to start applying, right? You have to start getting ready to submit job applications. And this part can definitely be pretty overwhelming, right? But we'll break it down. The first thing you want to do is get your resume ready. I'm assuming most people here have resumes. This is directed both Zoom and in person. Does everyone have a resume, or have you done a resume before? You have? Great. I'm going to ask this question to everybody in person on Zoom. So what goes into a resume? What kind of information do you have on there? Job experience, yep. Work experience, absolutely. That's a big one. What else? What else goes on a resume?
About our skills.
Skills, yep, absolutely. Work experience, skills, yeah.
Professional summary.
Yes, you can have a professional summary, exactly what you're looking to do, or maybe a summary of your experience. Yep, absolutely. What else? There's another sort of big category here that's usually on a resume.
Expertise.
Yeah, that sort of goes in skills, but also that could count expertise. That could mean training and education as well. Exactly. So yeah, you all were correct. A resume is your summary of your skills, your experience, and your education. We will be having another workshop over the coming months specifically about resume writing, but we'll kind of just go over it briefly here. So, the purpose of the resume is to highlight all of your skills, experience, and education. A resume is not necessarily going to get you the job, right? The job search process is has many steps. What a resume is designed for is to get you an interview, right? So, ideally, you find a job you like, you apply for it. A hiring manager reviews your resume, says, great, you're a qualified candidate. Let's bring them in and talk to them. So, and hiring managers get a lot of different resumes from a lot of different candidates. So you really want to make your resume stand out. And the best way to do that is to tailor your resume as closely as possible to the job that you're looking to get. So if you have any experience that they're asking, that if you're reading a job description and they're asking for certain experience, which you have, make sure you highlight that on your resume. If they're looking for certain education or training requirements and you've got those, make sure you highlight those to stand out. You do want to tailor your resume at least a little bit. We'll get into job boards in a little bit, but you are more likely to get some better results if you do highlight the experience and education that a certain job is looking for, versus just sending them a generic resume that maybe doesn't highlight that as much. You can certainly use a sort of standard resume as a template, but for every job you apply for, I would highly recommend that you do try to tailor it to that job description. That does take a lot of work. It is a process, but I think it does pay off. It does pay off. The other thing, which is good to have, although sometimes optional, is a cover letter. I don't know how many of you have done cover letters, but basically a cover letter is a one-page summary of your experience in education, but it allows you to provide a little more detail on certain things than you would in a resume. If there's a specific experience that you would like to highlight or some sort of training that's listed on your resume, the cover letter is a way to really go into a little more detail about that. A cover letter also gives you the chance to talk about why you're interested in a certain company, right? Why are you really interested in working for this company versus any of the other companies that you could be applying to? There's not really a way to do that in your resume, but that's where the cover letter comes in. So it's a way to further market your skills. And of course, with that, you want to tailor that to any job descriptions as well. Comments or questions on resumes? That was a very brief overview. I am happy to go into a little more detail if anyone would like. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question.
Sure.
It is good to put the social security number and your resume.
All right.
Now, since we are afraid to give to anybody the social security number, so I'm afraid to do that now, right? Because in my time when I was applying for jobs, I just put in my social security number, but I'm more susceptible now not to put in my social security number.
Mm-hmm. So the question,
what I want to know is, what is the advantage to put in the social security or not to put it?
I understand. Thank you for the question. So the question was, do you want to include your social security number on your resume? The answer I would say is no. I can't think of any circumstance really where you would want to include your social security number on your resume. It may have been that sort of a little while ago that may have been more sort of commonly accepted, but nowadays I would absolutely say there's no reason to put your social security number on there. And it's a privacy thing, right? You never know who's going to be looking at it. Yeah, exactly. And especially if you're using job boards like Indeed and places like that, you don't want that information sort of floating around the internet. For the most part, companies will only ask you for your social security number later in the hiring process. There are some I've seen that ask you in the initial application, mostly for sort of like public safety or like teachers. I've seen it asked for, but those are where there's like a sort of a background check required. But all of those are usually secure, right, as part of the application process. So short answer, you don't want to put your social security number on the resume, and you're unlikely to need to include it in the initial application as well. And just as good practice, be careful about any companies that are asking you for that social security number, unless you're sure that it's that it's going to be safe. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question. Great question. Any other comments or questions on resumes? Yeah.
A question about cover letters. Tech companies now seem to want to move away from cover letters. They don't seem to like to read them. Do you still recommend writing one just to be safe?
I think it's always good to have one. You may or may not need to submit it, but having a cover letter ready that you can tailor, I think is always a good idea. Even if you're not asked to submit a cover letter through an online sort of application portal, you can still use a version of the cover letter. For instance, if you're directly emailing someone, right? Maybe you went to a networking event and you got the contact information for a recruiter, you want to send them your resume. In the body of that email, you can put that cover letter and as well as sending them the resume, and that sort of gives them a little more information about you. So it can be used as a networking tool, even if you don't necessarily need to submit it for every job. So yeah, I would recommend having at least a version that you can modify as needed. Yeah. I do want to address one other thing about resumes because I do get this question a lot. ChatGPT and using AI to tailor your resumes. Again, it's a lot of work, especially if you are changing your resume a little bit for every job that you're applying for. And a lot of people like to use ChatGPT. So overall, I think that's fine. The best practice I would suggest there is once you get the result from ChatGPT, right, whether that's updating your resume or whatever, really review it and make sure that everything on there is true and that it sounds like you. The last thing you want is for AI to put something on your resume that experience that you don't have or education you don't have, and then to get into an interview and get caught by that and then have to explain it, right? So if you want to use AI tools, that's fine. Just make sure that you review the final product and make sure that it really does sound like you. And any other comments or questions? All right, moving right along. So online job boards. If you're looking for a job, you are almost certainly going to come across these job boards and probably use them yourself. There's a lot of them out there, right? Indeed, Glassdoor, Career Builder, Monster is not quite as popular as it used to be, but it's still out there. Simply Hired, LinkedIn. So all of these, these job boards are available to use, and they are good tools. The advantage of these job boards is, they are very good at pulling together a lot of different job opportunities, right? You can tell pretty quickly sort of what companies are hiring and what kind of positions they're applying for, right? It brings it all together in that one space, and I think that's very useful. That's a very useful tool to have. A lot of these job boards will also let you apply to the jobs directly. If you're on Indeed, for example, you can create a profile and then just once you upload your resume, you can pretty much do a 1 or 2 click apply to a lot of jobs, and that's okay. But I will say my experience in using some of these job boards is sometimes they're not 100% accurate. For example, Indeed can be slow to update. So they may be posting positions that the company has already filled, right? And it hasn't, they haven't updated their site yet. Sometimes the information on them may be a little bit incomplete, right? So you want to be a little bit careful. What I recommend is, you can certainly start with Indeed or Glassdoor or any of these websites. I recommend, going on there, seeing what companies are hiring, and then actually going to the company websites themselves to check to make sure the job is still available and to see if there's any additional information about that job that may or may not, that may not have been on Indeed or one of these job boards. It is a little bit of extra work, versus just sort of applying to, mass applying. But, I do think it pays off because, you don't want to waste your time applying to jobs that have already been filled. Again, that said, they're a good tool. Yeah, go ahead.
How about the Glassdoor?
How about Glassdoor?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Glassdoor is similar to Indeed, in that it tells you, it gets a lot of information from different companies and their hiring.
so
Uh,
also on Facebook, so they explain that, I don't know, I have no idea about that.
yeah, so Glassdoor is similar to Indeed. You can type in sort of what type of job you're looking for and what location you're in. Maybe you live in Silver Spring, so you're looking for IT jobs in Silver Spring. And it'll come up with a list of different companies and opportunities. Glassdoor actually has, they're pretty good. You can actually find salary information as well for some of these companies, as well as company reviews. Do people like working there or not, right? And that's part of your market research. We discussed salary, but also, is this company a good place to work? If you go on the just sort of the public facing website of any organization, it's probably going to look pretty good, right? They want to show themselves in the best light. But if you really want a good idea of their work culture and things like that, going to Glassdoor and even Indeed has the reviews now. LinkedIn, you can get a sense of what it's actually like to kind of work at those companies. Now, you do want to take it with a grain of salt. A lot of times reviews are made by people who, have really strong feelings about the company one way or the other, but it is more information for you to use. So that's another strength of these job boards. Comments or questions on this? Has anyone had any sort of experience using these job boards, and do you find them helpful or not? Okay, well, they're a tool just like anything else, and in your job search, you want to be using a lot of different tools and not just relying on one. That's sort of the bottom line here, I would say, with the job boards. All right. There are also some, along with sort of the general kind of job boards, there are some industry specific sites as well. These are all IT specific. We are at the Ignite Hub. So websites like Dice and Stack Overflow and Flex Jobs. So, if you are looking for a specific career, there are likely some job boards out there specifically for those opportunities that you're looking for. May take a little research to find them, but that having a website that's dedicated, sort of specifically dedicated to one career field, can oftentimes give you some more options that you may not get on the more kind of general job boards. So I'm just going to reiterate my other question. Has anyone used these job boards before? Or is anyone familiar with these? Yeah,
I use LinkedIn and then I use Glassdoor for reviews.
LinkedIn. And do you feel like they're pretty useful, or I mean, they may not be, and that's fine,
I
but
think LinkedIn's a good aggregator, but there's a lot of
yeah.
outdated or bad job postings.
Yep. Yep. And so so he just said that LinkedIn and Glassdoor are okay, but there's a lot of outdated job postings and things like that. Which, yeah, that is a risk you're gonna run using some of these online job boards. That's why I always recommend going directly to the company site. I've also another sort of complaint that I've heard is that you can get a lot of spam emails. If you put your information into Indeed or Glassdoor or some of these places, they send you a lot of emails, and some of the jobs they send you may not be relevant. There are ways to kind of narrow your search. There are some filters you can put in place, but that's another reason why you may want to go to the company website directly versus doing everything through one of the job boards. Again, it's a good aggregator. It gets you a lot of information on the front end. But when it comes to applying, I would always say try to do it through the company website. All right, moving on. So, a lot of effort in your job search is probably going to be spent doing online applications, whether through a job board or through online portals for various companies. But that can't be your only strategy. It's pretty easy once you've got a good resume. It's pretty easy to just sort of mass apply. But that may not be the most effective way to go about it. You certainly should be doing that. That is a good strategy. but you know, you want to be working on a couple different pathways here, and that's where networking comes in. So networking is still a very important part in the job search process, and networking is basically finding personal connections that can help you get the job, right? You may have heard the phrase, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And you know, that still holds true to an extent. You know, personal connections can really it is one way to help you stand out amongst all the other, you know, applicants that are applying for a certain company or a certain job. Networking, you know, can mean a lot of things, right? It can be sort of very informal. You know, maybe you have a friend or a family member who works at a company that you're interested in. So you talk to them about, you know, what opportunities, maybe they can put in a word for you, right? That sort of thing, that's sort of informal. It can also be more formalized. Maybe you attend a job fair or a hiring event or an information session for a certain company or a career field. Maybe you get the chance to speak to a recruiter there, right? To, you know, speak to them in person. That's a little more formal, but that's also a type of networking. We had Anthony here mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social media platform that's basically intended for professional networking, right? You can connect with people, you know, on there and ask questions and you know, find different opportunities. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I tried before, I will like it.
You don't like LinkedIn, but that's fine. You know, your experience may vary, but it is a networking tool. It is a networking tool. Some other now, you know, talking with recruiters or sort of asking people about opportunities can be, you know, it can be overwhelming. It can be scary, right? I don't, you know, a lot of us may not want to go up and just sort of ask someone, hey, you know, do you have any opportunities? Or you know, I'm introducing myself as a total stranger to you. You know, let me, you know, that can be, you know, that can be stressful. So there are other ways of networking that don't sort of involve that, right? Volunteering is a big one. I am a huge proponent of volunteering. Volunteering, I think, is sort of potentially sort of a less stressful way to meet people. You don't even have to be volunteering, you know, sort of doing anything that's related to your chosen field, just because a lot of people volunteer for a lot of different things. You never know who you're going to meet. If you do get the chance to volunteer, you know, with something that you're interested in, you know, that can lead to a job, right? If you get the chance to maybe volunteer with a company that you're interested in working for, you know, even if you're not getting paid right away, the company gets to see your work ethic, they get to know who you are, you know, and that is going to make you stand out. And you know, it can certainly lead to can potentially lead to jobs. There are also things like, you know, Meetup and Facebook groups and things like that, you know, basically communities of people either in person or online, you know, who share an interest in maybe IT or something else. You know, and a lot of these people, you know, may be working in you know, a company that you're interested in or a field that you're interested in, and they're a great resource for knowledge. You can ask questions. You know, they may be able to present opportunities that, you know, aren't going to show up on a, you know, on an online job board, right? A lot of job openings are not advertised, you know, necessarily through Indeed or even on the company website. A lot of them are hired by referrals, right? So someone, you know, refers someone else for a position. So, you know, while networking is something that I do think a lot of people struggle with, and understandable, the good news is there are a lot of tools to sort of make that happen, and it's just about finding sort of which strategies work for you. Comments or questions on networking? All right. The easiest way to sort of get started with networking, I would say, is, I think maybe we'll go into that. Yeah. You know, if you are interested in sort of getting a referral or a recommendation, you know, start with who you know, right? Talk to people that you're comfortable with, right? You don't have to necessarily approach strangers or, you know, or a recruiter or something. You can start with friends and family and so on. You know, let them know what you're interested in doing. Ask them if, you know, if they have some sort of connection that, you know, Could lead to a referral perhaps, or just to get more information. I will say with networking, the best strategy isn't usually, hi, I'm interested in getting into the IT field. Do you have a job for me? Right? That kind of puts pressure on the other person. You want to make it more of a conversation. Hi, I'm looking to become an IT specialist. I understand that you work at this company. I'd love to learn more about what you do and learn about any opportunities you have. Right? That's a much more sort of friendly and you're not sort of putting pressure on someone. It's a conversation, and then that's ultimately what the networking is. You can also have informational interviews. These are, when we think of sort of interviews, we think of meeting someone, meeting a recruiter, meeting a hiring manager, and basically advocating for yourself, answering questions about why you would be a good fit for the company. And it can be pretty stressful. It can be pretty stressful. As I think we've all probably know. Informational interviews are a little bit different. This is more of a conversation. You're setting up the goal is to set up a meeting with someone. It could be at a company or in the career field you're looking to enter. And it's just to have a conversation with them and ask questions. You're not necessarily expecting a job offer to come out the other end, but it's a way to gain information. So there's a lot less pressure. Doesn't mean that you can't then go ahead and apply to the company or doesn't mean that the person you're talking to couldn't give you a referral, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is simply to start the conversation and get information for yourself. Excuse me. You can also directly contact companies. Sometimes that's easier said than done. A lot of big companies may not have a direct phone number or email address for their HR department, which makes sense. They don't want a lot of people calling. But some smaller companies may have an email address or phone number or other sort of contact information, and you can follow up with them. And that's not necessarily a bad strategy. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that's also part of networking. This is just sort of a thought here, sort of a thought experiment for everyone. A lot of times when we do think about networking, some of the responses I hear from my clients are, well, networking sounds great, but I don't really know anybody, right? How do I don't really have a network to rely on. And what I say to that is, a network is very, very broad. Your network involves everybody that you know. It's not just someone who you think can get you into a certain position at a certain company. It is everyone. We mentioned friends, we mentioned family. If you're part of any sort of community organizations, church, whatever, all of those people are potentially in your network. If you're in school or in a training program, your classmates, are part of your network, right? You all have that in common. If you're currently working now, even if it's not in the job or the career field that you want to be in, you never know who your coworkers know. All of these people sort of make up your network. You want to take a really sort of broad view about this, and I think if you think about it a little bit, you will realize that you do have a network. Is it always possible to expand it? Of course, but I think it's fair to say that most everyone have some people that they feel comfortable enough talking to, where you can get started, and it never hurts to ask, right? Because you genuinely don't know who other people know, right? So just as a takeaway, I do want everyone here to think about, are there one or two people who you could, basically start your network with? All right. So we talked about following up. When you're applying online, and that's probably what you will do, companies get many hundreds or even thousands of applications, right? Depending on the size of their company, the job posting. And it can be difficult to make yourself stand out. Obviously, if you've tailored your resume and done your research, maybe some networking, that can help your chances. But it can be difficult to stand out. And that's where following up comes in. I always recommend where possible, and again, it's easier said than done, that once you apply to a company, if you can, try to send a professional follow-up email to someone at the company. A hiring manager or HR person is sort of best. But if you know somebody there who might be able to sort of put in a good word for you, that that works too. You do want to send it professionally. We mentioned how you could use a cover letter for this purpose as well. You could sort of put your cover letter in the body of an email to follow up. And what following up does is it's one more sort of point of contact that you'll have with the company, right? If 10 people apply to a job and they have similar resumes, but one person follows up, that one person is going to show that they're willing to sort of take that extra step to and sort of show that extra level of interest in the position. If the hiring manager receives a follow-up email and then is going through resumes later, that name is ideally going to stick out to them, right? So it's a way to sort of again stand out and hopefully sort of remind the hiring manager or whoever is reviewing applications that you exist and that you're very interested in this position. Again, easier said than done. A lot of big companies, may not really have an easy route to do this, but where possible, I would recommend it. That's also where something like LinkedIn can come in. Sometimes you can find, recruiters or folks like that on LinkedIn, and you can try to follow up with them that way. Again, you always want to remain professional, but it's an option. If you can, I always recommend, after you've submitted an application, you can sort of follow up within sort of right after you submit the application within a day or so, or no later than 1 week. Just because again, that's by that point your application will hopefully have been reviewed, and that's when you have the chance to really get their attention. So between that sort of within 24 hours and sort of 1 week period, that's when you want to sort of target your follow-up. This last point here should hopefully be self-explanatory. You don't want to stalk or harass the employer, right? Certainly if you applied to jobs online, it can be frustrating, right? Sometimes it seems like you've submitted your resume, submitted your application, and then nothing, right? You don't hear back. There's no information. You don't know what your status with them is, and that can be frustrating. That can be very frustrating, and rightly so. And the impulse can be, well, I want to call them or email them, to get an update. If you do follow up, I would recommend doing it, once or twice, probably by email. If you're trying to call a company, every day, if you're trying to email them every day, that sort of crosses the line from standing out and showing that you're interested and excited and working for the company. That crosses over into, this person is annoying now, right? That actually may reflect negatively on you. So, when you're following up, you don't want to try to reach out so much that it comes across as, stalking or harassment. Maybe try to follow up once or twice, a week or so apart. That's probably okay. Try to get in touch with someone every day, leaving a lot of messages, sending a bunch of emails, probably will have the opposite effect for what you're hoping for. Comments or questions on this? Yeah.
You recommend sending a professional email to if you can't find an HR person or contact them?
Yeah. Well, if you have some sort of, and that's a good question. Ideally, so the question is, who do you send a follow-up to if you can't find an HR sort of contact there? If you can, maybe someone like a department manager or someone like that, someone who let's say you're looking for an IT position at some company, maybe trying to follow up with the head of the IT department. Again, you may or may not be able to get their contact information, but someone like that, someone in a position of sort of authority for that the job that you're applying for. Sometimes if there's sort of a general email, you may be able to submit it there too, and hopefully it gets routed, from their general inbox to the appropriate person, whether that's a manager or an HR person. And if you do have a friend or someone who works there, they're also a good person to follow up with. Hey, I applied for this position. Can you check to see if my information got passed along? You can also look for, so I mentioned LinkedIn, and you might be able to find an employee of the company that you just applied for on LinkedIn. If you have established a relationship with them beforehand, you could follow up with them as well. I don't recommend applying to a company, then going on LinkedIn, finding someone who works there, and then sort of cold messaging them saying, hey, I applied for your company, what's going on, right? They're not going to know who you are. They're not going to have any reason to help you. But if you've established that sort of, some sort of connection with someone at that company ahead of time, then yeah, you can follow up with them. Again, easier said than done, but where possible, I would recommend doing it. Other comments or questions? All right. Moving right along. So the last part here, dealing with rejection, right? So, along the way, this presentation is called The Job of Finding a Job. And that's because finding a job is basically full-time employment in and of itself, right? You're going to be spending a lot of time working on resumes, on cover letters, submitting applications, attending events, preparing for interviews. It's a lot, and a lot of effort does need to go into it. And a lot of times that gets frustrating, right? There are a lot of emotions, both negative and positive, that are tied up in here. So things to remember, right? Competition is huge. For every job opening, you're likely not going to be the only person applying, right? There's always going to be other people. Doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. You may well be the most qualified candidate, but you will be competing against other people, right? Nothing happens overnight. It's rare, I would say, that you give a resume to someone and then get a job offer on the spot. It certainly can happen. Sometimes there are hiring events, that sort of facilitate that. But for the most part, you'll be waiting a little bit to hear back for the results of your hard work. And there will be disappointments, right? A lot of your applications may end in rejection, and that's part of the process. So the point here is to sort of be aware of all that ahead of time and not let it get you down. Here's a graphic of sort of the emotional roller coaster of the job search, right? You start out pretty optimistic. Maybe you're submitting your initial round of applications. Maybe you even get a call back, right? And get a call for an interview, right? So you're pretty happy. Of course, preparing for an interview or waiting to hear back, anxiety and even sort of fear can also come with that. Maybe you get some rejections, and the emotions sort of stop being positive and get a little more negative, right? It can be very frustrating and depressing. But eventually you'll get another hit, maybe another interview, and then the process kind of starts over again. This is all very normal. Everyone sort of goes through this emotional roller coaster, but it can take a toll on you if you're not prepared, right? You want to be very sort of aware of your mental health and kind of how you're handling these emotions. So how do you sort of maintain a positive mindset throughout this whole process, right? You want to understand the process. So these realities right here, it's going to take a while, and you should expect some disappointment. That's just the process. Once you submit an application, it may take a couple weeks before you hear back for an interview, right? Sometimes the process is slow. So just sort of keeping in mind those realities. Another thing would be to establish a routine. If you can establish a daily, weekly, monthly routine that you follow, and that you're really focused on completing every day, that can help take your mind off the waiting and the frustration. If you establish a routine with these goals, you'll be accomplishing something. Even if it's not quite as fast as you'd like, you'll still be accomplishing something. You do want to focus on what you can control. You can't control, whether or not you'll be accepted for any given position. So, you know, while you're obviously hopeful, you don't want to sort of focus on sort of dwell on sort of the negatives of, oh, I may or may, I may not get this, may not get this job. That's not really something you can control. Focus on more what you can, right? Like, I can apply for 3 jobs today. I can practice for my interviews. I can, rewrite my cover letter. Those are all things that you can do something with. It's important to sort of focus on that, so you're not sort of worrying about things that are either going to happen or they're not, right? That's not really a productive use of time, and it can take a toll on your mental health. As we mentioned, this whole job search is a job in and of itself, and like any regular job, you can't go 100% all the time. You're going to get burned out. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to be demotivated if you're trying to do all of this all the time. So that's why part of the job search is taking a break and focusing on yourself. This process can be overwhelming, so part of it is doing whatever you need to do to feel comfortable and take care of your health as you're going through the process. Maybe that's going for walks outside or exercising. It could be listening to music, watching TV shows, whatever, reading, whatever you find sort of helps you find that and incorporate that into your routine. Your routine isn't all just work; it also includes sort of breaks. The last point here is finding support. None of us are alone in this job search journey, even though it can feel pretty isolating and frustrating. I can guarantee that there are other people out there feeling exactly like you. So you are not alone. And as we sort of mentioned with the networking, the networking goes beyond just finding a job, but it's about getting that personal support as well, right? You want to find, you want to find a group, could be friends, family, even something like this, right? We're all here for this workshop. This is a group of sorts, a support group of sorts. Find those people who can cheer you on in your job search, and who you can be honest with about how you feel, and can sort of encourage you to keep going. So again, I think all of us do have a bit of a support network in a sense. So make sure you're connecting with those people. That can really that can make this process feel a whole lot better if you feel like you're not going through it alone. Here's a sample sample sort of weekly routine, right, for a job search. Replying to emails, submitting applications, reaching out to people in your network, studying a new skill, right? Education and training is also part of your job search. But you'll notice that in red here, they've got these self-care activities, right? It's not just about the job search activities, it's about the self-care as well. So exercising, taking care of your other responsibilities outside of the job search, planning time with family or friends, spiritual time, whatever that may be. A good sort of plan and routine incorporates both. Comments or questions on any of this material? I know we went through a lot. We will be going a little more into detail on some of this in future workshops. But as we begin to wrap up now, any sort of final comments or questions? Hopefully you took something away from all of this. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We really did appreciate you joining us both in person and virtually for our first workshop of 2025. We will have one workshop a month over the next 5 or 6 months as well. We hope you can make those as well. Before you log off or leave, we do ask that you use this QR code to fill out a quick workshop survey. The results are anonymous, and we do use the feedback to help improve our offerings for future workshops. So if everyone could just take a minute to complete that would be great. I'm going to leave this up for couple seconds here, and then I'd like to talk briefly about the Ignite Hub, and we will wrap for the day. Drop this in the chat too, actually. Oh, just the QR code. I don't know if that would be helpful for the folks on Zoom.
Do you think that will work?
I can try to find it. You know what? I'm gonna click away from this screen for a minute. If you need me to go back, just put it in the chat for the folks still on Zoom, and I can go back to it. So before we wrap here, I just want to give one quick plug for the Ignite Hub here. As I mentioned, this workshop is hosted, by the Ignite Hub at Montgomery College. If you go on the website, ignitehubmc.com, you can find a list of the upcoming workshops. Our next one will be on February 11th, and it'll be covering transferable skills. You can attend either in person or virtually, just like today. Aside from these monthly career workshops, the Ignite Hub also offers a lot of good information sessions around IT. There are lunches, evening fireside chats, and other workshops, throughout the upcoming months. So, especially if you're interested in a career in IT, we definitely recommend you check out some of these other offerings as well. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a career coach, and one of the services that Ignite Hub is offering is one-on-one career coaching. So I'm not just here to facilitate these workshops. You can also reach out and set up one-on-one coaching sessions with me. So we will do things like, I can help you update your resume, help you with goal setting, career planning, identifying appropriate job opportunities, prepping for interviews, all the kind of support that, goes into finding a job. If you are interested in that, you can go to the Ignite Hub website. Under programs, there's a career coaching option, and you can use this link here to make an appointment, or email this address here. And actually, what I will do is, this is my direct email. If you are interested in setting an appointment, please email me, and I will get in touch. I've got a few appointments scheduled for this afternoon, so if you do want to set up a time to meet, probably emailing me is best, and we can set up a time to talk and see how Career Catchers and the Ignite Hub can potentially help you on your career journey. Going to